Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this project we're going to learn how to make this gorgeous tree of life sculpture. It's double-sided. I have a really clever way to hide all of those cut ends. I'm using 16 gauge round soft copper wire for the frame, 28 gauge for the tree sculpture, and various chip beads of 2 to 4 millimeter. It's a really beautiful project. Very relaxing, and I hope you will love it. Let's get started. Hi everyone, welcome back. To start this tree project, I'm going to use 16 inches of 16 gauge round soft copper wire. I've marked the center at 8 inches. For the tree sculpture itself, I'm going to use 28 gauge round soft copper wire, and I have 36 feet of this. So on a cardboard that is 6 inches long, I've made a little cutout. I've inserted one end off of my spool, and I went around this cardboard 36 times. So at 6 inches times one complete revolution is 1 foot. So 36 feet in total of 28 gauge soft copper wire for the tree sculpture. My beads are a mix of peridot and round Chinese copper crystals for some sunlight and a little bit of shimmer, and some darker beads of regular green chip beads. You can use things like emeralds if you want a really dark green. I think I'm using agate for these little slightly darker green beads. These are just all chip beads. They're about 2 to 4 millimeter in size. So the smaller you can get them, like this size, I think the better. The bigger chips don't work as well, I don't think. They'll work nicely, but if you can get them smaller, it'd be better. So a nice little blend of light green, a little bit darker green for some shadowy areas, and some Chinese crystal round facets for a little bit of sunshine and bling. And that'll give a nice canopy mix. I use a little felt pad so that I can keep my beads on it, and that way later when I'm ready to string the canopy, it's easy to access all of my little chip beads. Alright, so let's get started. I like to start this project by making the pendant frame first. So I'll start at my 16-inch and 16 gauge wire. I'll start in the middle at 8 inches. I'll use my flat nose plier, grip it tightly, and make a bend, whoop, to about 45 degrees. Just make a V shape. You can use your fingers or you can use a dowel. I'm just going to use my fingers, and I'm going to make a curve in these wires. So I'll just hold it steady, and about 1 inch or so from the tip, I'll just use my finger and I'll make a nice curve on the wire. And I'll curve it until I've just got a nice angle back towards the center. So I cross the center about here. And we'll refine these. I'll flip it over so I'm making the same motions. Put my thumb about 1 inch from the tip, hold everything, and just start a nice curve. Flip it over and just refine it a little bit. Check the other side, make comparisons, and just use my fingers to shape a nice frame. These are tree of life pendants, so it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect or symmetrical. Just make it look like a nice leaf shape, kind of like this. Just work yours until you love it. Just keep focused that these two crisscross over the bottom point, and that kind of helps you to keep your sides a little bit more even. You know, they don't have to be perfectly even, but so that the bail ends up at the top of the pendant and not listing over to the left or to the right. So I'm just going to curve those a little bit. You can pull it in to make it a little bit smaller or larger if you like. And looking down here, I like my pendant to be about 2 inches. So I'll just open that up a little bit until they crisscross here at 2 inches. You can make yours a little bit smaller. So just a nice leaf shape at about 2 inches. Doesn't have to be exactly perfect. About like that. So now I'm going to go ahead and hammer these 2 sides and flare it out a little bit. I'm not hammering too much these days, but I'm going to hammer just this little frame. I'm using my ball peen hammer. You can use this or a chasing hammer. And I'm just going to hammer on this curve to flare it out some and harden the frame wire. As I strike, I'm pulling back slightly so I can tell the metal where to go. And I'm striking more on the curve, and I'll strike less going into the points to taper the wire. This is 16 gauge wire, so you can hammer it to your liking. I'm not going to hammer too much, just a little bit to give myself a little bit of flattened wire and also some rigidity in the wire. Makes it a little bit harder, and I might just hammer that a little bit more. You're holding this point so that you don't lose your center. And that's pretty good there. So I'll just switch sides, and I'll do the same to this side. When I get up near where they cross, I don't want to hammer that because it'll dent that wire, so I am just going to turn it over and get that little bit. And that helps you to flatten that out without crushing your intersection there. So I'll put this back down on my board to make sure that I'm still at 2 inches. I might spread it out a little bit because as you hammer, sometimes the metal alters its shape. So that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. Let me get it over here where you can see it. That's pretty good there. I can see that I'm, about 1/2 inch and 1/2 inch from the inside and a couple of inches, and that's pretty good for me. I'm going to just raise these a little bit. About like that. And you could go ahead and sand all this metal down now. That's optional. If you are going to sand, you could use these sanding pads. They are soft touch pads. They're really nice. They help you get into the metal really well. And they're nice and flexible, easy on the hands. I usually start with 1,000, go to 2, and go to 3 if you're hand sanding. I'm going to save my tennis elbow and not sand, but if you wanted to, you could start with the 1,000, go through all of your metal, move up to 2,000, and even to 3,000 if you choose. Okay, those are your options. So we'll continue with the tree frame. Now that I have it all shaped out and sanded out, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that my crisscross here is indeed on top of the point so that I have a center for my bail. And this is going to be like the earrings. I'm going to just flip this top wire to the back, and actually I'll do it this way so it'll be easier. I'll flip the bottom wire, which is the wire I just had, right over the opposite wire. I'll make it nice and close. I'm holding tight and I'm just bringing it right back over onto itself. You want to make sure that it's aligned with the bottom wire the best that you can. And before you squeeze it all down, you want to make sure that you didn't take yourself out of shape and that you didn't move the inside wire as you bent this over. So I'm still in good shape. I'll hold everything really steady. I'll get my nice wide plier and I'll start squeezing these two together. You want to hold the leading wire here to give yourself control over how it closes. You want to make sure that nothing shifts, and you want to make small moves. Make sure that this inside wire stays in place. And when you get it to the place where it's touching, you want to give a nice hearty squeeze, almost as if to dent the wire, so that you really lock that inside one in place. The side that this wire comes down, I'll consider the back side of the frame, or the inside. This will be the front side of your pendant. So now the inside wire, we're going to bring it over and bring it down to this side, but we're going to give ourselves a little bit of a bail up here so that we can insert a jump ring later. So you'll hold everything steady, make sure it doesn't move, and just put a slight curve on it so that it comes straight back up to the top. So it makes a nice straight line. Just like that. And again, we're flipping it to the side where the opposite wire, the same side that the opposite wire flipped to. And I think I forgot to put these on the tools list, but you do want your round nose pliers. Hopefully you've got some. You could use your chain nose pliers if you don't, but if you have round nose pliers, you want to get about a ½ inch, or so, and you want to grip with the widest part of the plier. Hold steady, bring it up 90 degrees, and bend it over that rounded part of the plier, and straight down the back of the pendant. So you're kind of making a little U shape right there. You can squeeze it closed with your bare hands. Not all the way closed, but just about to there. Just skinny it up a little bit. Take your flat nose pliers after that. Grip it from its side. And put a curve in this wire that matches the curve on that neck. And just curve off the pendant like that. That'll become your bail, where you can either put a jump ring or you can put the actual chain itself through there. Okay? And we'll just leave these two wires back here like this until we attach the tree next. Put a slight bend on that. So you're kind of looking like a leaf with a little bit of a stem. And then we're going to build our tree inside of here, and then we'll bring these wires down, and I'll show you the trick of covering those cut ends from the tree sculpture with these back wires. So you'll have a double-sided pendant after that as well. Alright, so we'll start the next part of the tutorial, which is to sculpt the tree. So we'll put our frame aside and we'll get out our tree wire, the 28 gauge on the cardboard spool. So to release these wires from my spool, my homemade spool, I'm going to first release the two ends from the cardboard. Just pull them out like that. You want to make sure that you are holding all of the wires together underneath your thumb, and you want to make sure that you're close to the top, about 1 inch away. Same for the back. You want to make sure that all the wires are underneath your fingers and your upper finger is about 1 inch from the top, so you have control over this. You're going to turn your blades so that the inside faces you, so the blade will be behind you. And you'll take your cutter and kind of wedge underneath all wires. Take a nice clean snip. Make sure you wedge under all the wires. Make another nice clean snip, and don't pull anything away until you're sure you've cut through all of them. Just like that, and that's pretty clean. While it's here, you could also go ahead and cut these little curved ends off while it's on the cardboard. It'll be a little easier for you. I just usually put these longer ends with this and make the same cut. I'm still holding on to all wires, and you want to do this over your garbage can. I'm going to demonstrate it here, but the best place is over your garbage can, because these will be tiny little shards and you don't really need to have them on your desktop. But to show you how I'll cut them, I'll come through and just take very clean snips into my garbage can, so I'll be pointed down and into the garbage can. I'll put my finger here to control the splatter of shards, and I'll take one nice clean cut, and then I'll release all of this into my garbage can, which I'm going to do over here. Make sure that you don't cut your finger with those tiny little ends. And then I'll come through and take another clean cut by realigning my plier and taking the other end of it off. I'll make sure to keep holding on to everything. I'll flip over to this side, get my fingers close to the top, controlling all these wires. I'll peel this back from the cardboard a little bit, and I'll repeat. I'll cut about halfway through, taking off just, the upper couple of millimeters. So we take that curve, that slight curve off the wire. That'll prevent them from snagging each other later. It's a small move, but a super important one, so make sure you do this. And I'll snip through the other side and get them nice and clean. Now to remove this from the spool, I'll make sure to keep both halves of the wire under control. I'll slide this bundle off, and I've got the whole thing. I'll take the spool off the wires. This is the bottom center of the wires. I'm going to make sure that all things stay lined up, and I'm going to snip right through that. You'll hold this like hair, and you'll notice that you'll have nice, clean, even ends that are not snagging on each other. I'll just use my plier and I'll cut through. First, I like to tap it so that it's all nice and flat. And then I cut through half, reposition my plier, cut through the other half, and you'll notice you have the same little curved ends. While your fingers are up here, keep everything in your hands. Just hold it like two strands of hair that you're going to braid. And I'm going to cut these ends off into my trash. So I'll handle it just like I did the other side. I like to tap them and get them a little bit flat. Take my snip, dump the ends into the garbage, realign my plier, get the rest of them. I'll carefully keep these two bundles under control, and I'll just switch fingers here, switch sides with the bundle, so that I can snip these off. If your cutter's long enough, sometimes you get lucky and you can get them all off at the same time, like that one. Make sure your cutter's hardy for that. Alright, so now I have two strands basically of 36 pieces each, so 72 pieces in total. I've got them cleanly under control in my fingers. I'm finding the approximate middle of these two 6 inches, And I'm going to go a little bit below middle, okay? So not quite the middle, but a little bit below the middle. And I'll just crisscross these two wires, keeping these two wire bundles, keeping them under control so that I can see where I'm crisscrossed. These are even. My bottom ones are even. If they're not even, I'm going to make them even. And I'm going to make sure that that crisscross is a little less than exactly middle. Okay, so about like this. I'll hold it very steady right there. Put my fingers in between here to brace. Get these two to be ready to twist. By keeping your finger down here, you kind of counter pressure on these two bundles. It'll help you to twist. Make one tight, very tight twist, moving this direction all the way to 360. So you're facing your X again. These will become the branches, these will become the roots. So make one more nice big twist. This will become the tree trunk itself. So you have a nice X, and you can see that the top pieces are slightly longer than the bottom pieces. And this entire trunk section is a little less than 1 inch. It's about 3/4 inch long, and that fits nicely in my frame so that I have room for branches and I have room for roots down here. And you'll see we're going to curve this so it'll be a little bit less, it'll be more like a bonsai shape. So this is the start. You want to make sure that those twists are nice and hardy and tight together. And now we'll hold, this is the top and these are the roots. I'll hold right here where they come together so that I don't untwist myself, and I'll hold down here where they come together, and I'll just do a slight bend on this tree trunk. Just give it a slight curve. If your wires start to loosen up at their intersections, just keep control over them. And that looks pretty good. I like to start with the roots. I'm going to leave the branches as they grow this way, but I'm going to start twisting the roots together. You want to make sure that you're always facing the tree the same direction so that your twists are all going in the same direction. You don't untwist yourself. So kind of earmark this. The curve is going to the right as the top of your, the front view of the tree. So as we're twisting, we're always mindful of that. So I'll start with the roots. I'll keep my fingers right here to control where they come together. And I'll split the first bundle in half. It doesn't have to be a perfect half because tree roots are uneven. So just get a nice split going. Hold right here. Get really tight and twist. You can keep these branches about 90 degrees here whenever we're twisting. So there goes one twist, and let me make one more twist. You don't want to twist too much because we don't have very much room at the bottom of the frame. You're always referencing your frame to make sure that you know how your tree is growing and that it fits inside this little picture. So I've just made a couple little twists right there. I'm going to probably curve this a little bit more. So you see, you don't have much room. We just want to get a few twists and be able to get around our frame, anchor the tree, and have some interest. Okay, so right about here. Since there isn't really any more room for this half of the root, I'm just going to split it and twist it all the way out so that I have nice twisted wire to go around my frame when I anchor this. I like to twist all of my branches and roots all the way out to make sure that I have enough to wrap around the frame and create an interesting sculpture and not just a wrap. So very tight all the way down. And now we're at the bottom little bit right here, so I'll split this one in half, and I'll only twist a couple, and then I'll twist, you know, two branches, two roots out from there to give myself some smaller pieces. You don't have to. You could just split these in half. So I'll just split this one in half and twist it out. I'll hold right here and keep control. I'll part these so that I can give nice clean twisting, and I'll twist them all the way to the ends. So there goes two of them. And when the time comes, I'll use these two to wrap onto the frame. So I have this bundle left, and I can make, you know, I can split them a few more times and make some interesting small straggly roots with these guys, since I have a little bit more room. So I'm still facing everything the same direction. I'll just hold it this way so that I can split it a little easier. My first one, I'll split these two evenly in half, or approximately evenly. Get really close right there and take a really good twist, really deep and tight but not far. So just once and twice like that. So you have a nice thick but very short piece right there. And then now we'll split this half. Just keep everything under control. Get really deep in there. Keeping these two at about 45 degrees. 90 degrees. And just twist all the way to the bottom. And now this one. Get them cleanly split here. Get super close. And then twist them all the way out. Until they end. Now you have some beautiful tree roots that we can do some interesting things with. And you should have a nice curve on your tree here, always protecting this intersection right here so it doesn't unravel. I like to sculpt my tree off of the frame so that I have options. So it'll kind of go like that. We'll use these to wrap on later and create some nice old roots and kind of, you know, mystical patterns down there with our roots. But for now, we'll start to twist out the branches as long as you have your curve here going the way you like it. So now I'll start sculpting the branches of the tree. You can see how it's going to sit in my frame, kind of like this. So I'll make this bundle of branches kind of spread off and go this way, and this little bundle through the top and over here a little bit. There's a lot more wire than we probably need. We could have used a bigger frame, maybe even. But I like a substantial looking tree, and I like it to have, there's Jolene yawning, I like it to have a lot of details. So anyway, So we'll start on this next, and we'll start to branch out the top of our sculpture. So right here, I'll take this upper bundle, split it, and get a very tight twist once, and another time around to make sure that they hold. Okay, so I'm going to look at what I've just done. I just put two big twists right there, and I'm going to put my tree back on the frame. I can see that I want more going this way and less because I don't have space right here. So rather than split this branch evenly, I'm going to give a little bit more to the top and put this one back up here. And I'll just twist out this little guy enough to just wrap around the frame and attach with there. Okay, and now I'll continue with the top sculpture here of the top of the tree. I'll just try to incorporate that one a little bit more. And then split these two. I kind of want to go that way with it. I know that because I just looked at the frame. So I might even give this side a little bit more and give this a little bit less. You just twist yours the way you feel. So after a couple right there, I'll make another split, and this will just make the tree a little finer in the branches. Then I'll twist this one out. And now I have a very fine little split branch right there. I'm always referring back to my frame to make sure that the tree I'm sculpting will fit inside this frame, and that looks pretty good there. I have some room to show that branch. You know, and I might bend it a little bit more here. And I'll continue to work these up this way to fill this space on this half of the frame and reserve these for this half of the frame. So I'll split this bundle and give a couple of really deep twists that are tight. And then I'll split these secondary bundles, give a couple of twists, and then to make it very fine, I could split them again and twist them all the way up. Sometimes you have ones that are bigger than others, and that's okay. Try to keep them proportionate. You know, the tree, as it branches out, the branches get thinner, but they're not always a 50-50 split, so they can look natural. This one only has 3 little ones. decided to start with a tree, even though it's probably counterintuitive because it's repetitive motions, but this actually doesn't feel too bad. The branches are very small, it's very tiny wire, and I've been taking a lot of breaks between and just taking my time, making sure that I sculpt a beautiful tree but not put my hands or my arms at discomfort. But I started with Tree of Life pendants, and I just felt like I wanted to return to my roots for a minute, kind of reconnect with my inner artist. These always bring me a great amount of peace when I make them. And I don't know, we just have that jewelry that kind of brings us back to home. So this is probably my home-based jewelry right here. Tree of Life is a really ancient grounding symbol for me, and certainly I revere nature, so I think it just helps me to stay in touch and bring the natural material, back into focus versus just getting into that routine of producing jewelry and really understanding, the metal again and the stones again. So that's quite beautiful. Go back down here to my frame, and I like the way the branches are kind of drifting off that way. I might have to actually do them some more, pull them in a little bit because I need some room for my roots down here, and then that looks pretty good. Probably bend that branch a little bit more and try to get some more of those branches into the frame. The beauty about doing it this way is if you love the tree and it doesn't fit in your frame, you're not attached, so you can use this on a different frame. That's why I do it this way, so you don't actually waste any of the beautiful sculpture that you do. And we'll make some bends, and it'll, reduce the size of these two. These are still very straight. Okay, so this one I'll split. I'll make a nice big side branch here. 2 big twists to get it going this way. I'll split this one. You just do yours to fit your frame and to fit your mood. Sometimes they just kind of build their own themselves. So I'll continue to work mine. You can just watch me. I won't speed up the video. I'll just do this in real time, but there's probably not a whole lot more talking to do other than just keep returning to your frame. Make sure that your sculpture looks beautiful. Take your time with it. You can have the branches overlapping each other too. I usually just kind of save that for the end. I sculpt the tree after I get all of these branches twisted out. last one here. I'm going to split it a couple of times and make some really small ones. So I'll get a couple of deep twists there, and then I'll twist these out into some really straggly little branches. You can hear Jolene in the background snoring. I don't know if you can, but if you do, that's her. So this one only has 3, but I'm just twisting them up the best that I can. And I twist all the way out to the end so that it'll be easier for me to feed back through the frame. Okay, so there's our beautiful tree sculpture. And again, we're focused right here really, because that's all that's going to fit into our frame. And we'll use the rest of this to tie on with, but let's put our beautiful tree sculpture up here and see what else we can do. Sometimes I come back and I look at it and I think, oh, I could bend it a little bit more and take the branches a little more, deeper into the frame. Sometimes you can turn the tree over and say, do I love it better from the other side? Does it fit better for some reason into the whole working of my frame? Sometimes the way the branches twist out, or does this whole tree fit on another frame? You built it out and you want more of the branches showing than are actually showing, so you just build a bigger frame. So I like it the way it is, and I'm going to start by attaching the roots, and then I'm probably going to put a deeper bend, but I'll wait till I get an attachment here first. Well, maybe I'll do it first actually. So you'll hold everything steady. I'm just going to adjust my tree. I'm going to hold that intersection, and right here where it's kind of bulky at that spot, I'm just going to make a little bit more of a bend on it and take that bulky out. And likewise, just give the bottom of it a slight push. So now my tree has more of a bonsai type feel to it. Now my roots will just attach more, kind of that style, and I love the way that's looking, so I think I'm going to work with that. So I'll hold it right here, and the first thing I'm going to do is probably just adjust these roots a little bit so that I have some interests, and so that they're not all just touching the bottom like that. So I'll push these two up this way a little bit. I want my tree sitting exactly like that, so all I need to do is get one nice loop around this frame. So I'm holding all my tree and the frame together. I'll get some pliers to help me out. And with this most outside one, I'm going to go up because it's such a little space. And actually I'll get my finer plier. I like the bent nose for this, but you could also use your chain nose or just your hands if your hands are strong enough. But once you get one of those big roots kind of through there, work it until it's as close as you can get it, going back and forth and pulling a little bit. Works really well. Then I'll take my flats, make sure that that's nice and on there. that is a nice tight loop. I'll turn it towards the back. I'm going to make a real clean cut. I'm still holding everything. It gets a little easier once you're attached once or twice. I'm going to cut this so that the ends lay right there facing the trunk itself. So I'll make a very close, clean cut. You want to keep all these branches together. I mean all of these wires together in one clean cut. And I'll show you a little trick at the end of the video for how else we can manage these little ends. But remember that they'll be sandwiched in here. So now you'll take a plier and just make sure to lay them all down right there on the edge of that frame, or slightly to the inside of the edge. Keep them all together. And make sure to kind of roll them in, just like that. Takes a little practice, but we can, again, there's a little trick at the end of the video I'll show you. So now I want to make sure that the tree remains positioned where I want it. That's a nice, good attachment there. And I'll go ahead, I usually like to attach one from this side now, so I'll take this inside one here. And first I'll just put a little interesting kind of bend to it and use my plier to make sure that it's just not so stick straight right there. So I just kind of mushed it up a little bit. I'm still holding the tree and everything in place. See, this is why you want to twist out to the end so that you don't fight those little stragglies like that. And I'm going to just go back and forth as I pull and tighten that little bit around the frame. I'll get my flat nose pliers. I'll get right on those wires and squish them tight. Come to the back, make sure I get a clean fold over. I'm going to take my pliers and my cutters and get right in there for the cleanest cut I can make, with just enough that I can roll them over and get them facing the inside of my frame. So right here under control, I'll take my wide nose pliers and I'll just kind of roll those ends to the inside, slight inside of the frame. Okay, pretty good so far. I'm going to just make sure that all that stays interesting down here. You can use your pliers and do a little sculpting afterwards even. If these are too jagged, cut them, and that way you'll have a clean end to feed through. So I'm going to do this last one. And I'll use my plier to help me pull it through. I'll make sure to leave a little, a little bit of the root going that way for interest, and I still have one, so I can still fill the gap that's right there with this one as I turn it through and bring it down. So this one, I'm going to make sure that I leave some space for the last one. I'm going to pull it tight right there. Come to the back and roll it over. Get a nice clean cut, leaving just enough of the stub to roll into that little spot and into the inside of the frame. Here's where a finer plier might work better for you. And just make sure to address each one of those little segments of straggly tips the best that you can. And again, don't fret too much because we're going to cover it and we have tricks to make sure all that stays in place. But you want it to be nice and clean and leave, you know, interesting shapes here for the roots. So this one is the last one. I'll start by taking the straightness out of it and just kind of giving it a little bit of a straggly interest there. And I want it to kind of fill that space and wrap around down here. So I'll bend it to the back, making sure I've got a little attachment there, but I'm not going to wrap it around that part of the frame. I'm going to feed it through that space. Try to do that as clean as you can so that the stragglies don't happen here, but if they do, just grab them all the best that you can and help them through that space without shredding apart your tree trunk. Just get it in there enough, there we go, to make interesting roots. That looks pretty good. I'll tap this first connection down here where we went to the back. That first bend. And then right here, it's going to be super tight, but you don't really need to go 360 through there. You just need to keep all of these together, bend it to the back, and then we're going to cut it off and tuck the ends right there, or the best that you can do. And then we'll make sure that they stay there by using our little trick that I'll show you at the end of this video. If you have enough space, you could try to go 360 back through there. Make the cleanest cut that you can. Mine went a little bit awry. So my ends are right there. I'm going to roll them and tuck them into that space. Get my wide plier, get right on the ends, and you know, while I tuck them in, I'm also squeezing them tight to the frame right there. So nice and clean right in there. Now when I look at my root system, look at how beautiful that bottom root system is. It's interesting, it's got character, looks like an old bonsai. So now that it's attached, I can do a little bit more shaping of my tree here and push it back a little bit so that the trunk goes that way a little bit. Reshape my branches here. They're all still fairly straight, so we'll add some interest to them. And you can bend the big one down a little bit. So here's where we can get our fine plier and start just making some interesting bends. Don't wreck your sculpture. But you can start I don't like to overdo it, but you can take some of these straight lines out. Add a little depth to the tree. Don't overdo it so you don't wreck your sculpture. Try to keep the interests within the frame. Raise that. So that when we add leaves, you'll have still some interesting shapes and dimensions to the branches. So that looks pretty good there. And I'll start by attaching these now that I've got those shaped a little bit. So sometimes to make it easier, you can just cut that little end off and give yourself some straight pieces here to work with. Hold the shape of your branch so that you don't pull it out of shape as you tie on. Take the end, I'm going to tie towards the roots. So I'm getting a tight wrap here, but I'm not pulling out my interesting shape. And it's enough to go once. So 1 360 and then the half lands you on the back frame. Trim it away nice and clean, leaving just enough to roll it to the inside. Get your wide plier, tap and roll those ends to the inside of the frame right there. Okay, so that looks pretty good. And then just keep working all the way around, doing the same, you know, adding some bends of interest, and then you tie onto your frame. Don't tie onto these two back wires, we'll come between them. So I'll show you what to do once we get there, but you can pull these out slightly and, you know, wrap only to the front part of the frame. Okay? Except for up here, we can wrap, once you get to these top ones, then we can wrap both of them. And that'll give some additional security. But you do that with these top ones. Okay, so you can work with me around the frame. I did this one side. I'll come over here and do some of this. Take this one and put a little interesting jag on it. And I'll wrap it to this bottom, going towards the bottom. Kind of like that. Could even do that a couple of times just for, you know, just for being artistic. Make it look like a vine kind of coming down. I like that. Cut it really close. Take the wide plier and make sure you tap the end of that one tight and roll those ends to the inside of the frame. I can even put another little bend on that. Bring it more this way so I can have a little more space for this guy. Sometimes too you gotta watch that the tree is actually all, you know, 3D this way. If it falls back this way, sometimes the perspective is different on where the branches land. Okay, so that's pretty good. I'll take this one and you make those little stragglies with just your finger too. See how I added some interesting bends to that with just my fingers rather than my pliers. And that looks pretty good. So I'll wrap onto the frame in between here. And I'll take it through this opening right here. And I'll get it really close and then take it back and cut it off. I'll do the same with this one. Just bring it underneath. So it's right here. Cutting the end to make it a little easier for me to get through so that the ends are not straggly. And I'm going to go right there, right next to itself. Hold on to the branch itself as you tighten it. And then come over to the back side and cut it off very, very closely. And then get your plier on it, roll the ends, and tighten them to the main frame. And that's very nice right there. And now with these upper ones, we're going to actually, tie both of them together. But before we do that, if you wanted to hammer these, you can. I'm not going to hammer them. I'm just going to shape them to my frame. So before we tie them all together, since I've worked this side, I'm going to align this with the under frame, the frame on the other side, and I'm just going to shape this right over those branches and right down here into this spot where the roots are. So once you get it shaped, if you want to hammer it, you can pull it out and hammer it. I guess I could show you to do that. So right here, you want to make sure it doesn't let go right there. I just push all my tree branches over. Hold it real steady right here. And pull this, make a bend right there, out enough that you can hammer this. So just hammer the curve, and then making sure to control this right here so it doesn't let go. Put your thumb there and push and pull that frame back into place, and it should go right over the tree roots, the branch turns right here, the branch ends. So it's kind of like we sandwiched them in together. And we'll do a little bit of tying to make sure that this wire stays there. But for now, you want to set up like that on the one side, and then we can finish tying the branches on the other side, and same, up top. Once you get up here, we'll put these branches back into place, more to this side. I'm going to use, see, in this I don't even think I need both of them. Kind of reevaluate some things. So it was kind of meant to do like that. I could put these two together. That might look a little bit better in that space. I could have left them apart too. Sometimes I do this if I feel like, there's just too much going on at the top, because I'm still going to tie beads onto these things, right? So by the time we tie a bead or two, and I might leave those blank with no beads and just start my beads over here. We'll have to see when I get ready. So I'll tie this on, but this time I'll grab both the main frame wires. And I'm going to feed it through, hold on to the branch so that you don't pull it completely straight. Tie both of them, get it tight, come to the back. Cut it close with enough to roll it over and tuck it into that space. Just like that. And I'll put some stragglies to the top here. So I'll pull that branch out this way a little bit. Kind of just start to sculpt these the way you want them. So I just made some interesting bends and such there. I'll use this one. I think I'm going to tie it, since there's a lot there, I'm going to tie this one towards this direction. You can also do like this and cross them, you know, if you wanted to bring more branches up here, and I might. I'll just, you know, you can cross back over some of them so that you have some additional interest, and I actually like that. I might do that. And leave this one up there, a little more closer to this direction. And then I'll work on this side because I have a lot, so it'll be plenty to cover all that over there. Okay, so I think I'm going to do something like that. You just work yours until you love it. With this one I might go also wrap both of the main wires right here, since it'll just be easier. There's a nice convenient spot right there. Come cleanly through both of them. Get it nice and tight without losing my interesting bends. And roll that end to the inside. So it'll kind of look like that. That's pretty good. Scooch underneath that. Make a nice tight wrap there. Cut it off very close. Get some nice big pliers and tap them down and wrap them inward. And here's the next bundle. Just work yours until you love it. And before we tie these last two, well, you could tie this one up here, but before we tie these last two, you want to make sure that if you're going to hammer that, leave it so that you bend it, pull it out, hammer it, and then tie it on. So I will tie this last one onto this side. And then now I'll shape this main wire. And I'll just have it follow the frame to make sure that we cover those little cuts. Once you get it shaped, right here, just pull it out. Let that be your hinge right there with enough space that you can hammer that. And then just push it back into place. Make sure that your bail wire still looks upright the way you want it. That looks really good there. So now we can bring these two branches back into play and tie them on. You just leave these crisscrossed at the bottom, and that looks pretty good. So I'll make sure that this is laying nicely. I may have overbent that. Hold on to your branch to make sure you don't lose the interest in the bends, and then feed this back through the frame, moving towards the roots, or the other way, whichever you prefer. Depends on, I like to just keep my wraps interesting too, that they're not too bundled together, but scattered logically and makes sense with my branch, that it's not just an odd stretch or reach. Bend it all the way over. Cut it off, take a wide plier, roll those ends and tap them tightly to the inside. And then here goes the last one. I think this one I will wrap towards the bail. So I'll come back through the frame to the right. Make sure that I have slack enough for interest. That looks pretty good. So then I'll cut that off. Last branch, and then we can start adding our canopy. Roll it and tap it tight. There we go. That looks pretty good. So now we actually have all of these little ends sandwiched in between these two wires. There's a lot you can do with the extensions here. So in the back here, I gave it a little bit of a bend and then I took it out. You want to make sure that these two rails stay over the cut ends so that they're still sandwiched in there. But I think what I'll do is make sure that the crisscross here comes below your frame about, I would say you could get it there about a half an inch and still be over your roots. So even if you need to make a slight bend right here to kind of get the frame a little bit lower, and then on this side the same thing, just make a slight bend. You'll leave them crisscrossed, but you'll just make a slight bend so that they cross a little bit lower below the frame while these two sides remain, over those cut ends. So just kind of like that. We're going to bend these over themselves and create some additional fancy on the frame here. So just like we did up top, I'm going to hold onto the bottom wire here. Well, actually, let's do this other one first. So I'll hold on to it right here. I'm about, get a little bit lower. I think that's pretty good there. So by the time you bend it up, it gets a little bit shorter. So about a half an inch, I'd say, from the base to where they cross. Maybe a little bit less than a half an inch, depending on how you want this to look, and you can watch first and then do yours. So I'll hold on to the bottom wire, just like I did the top here, making sure that it doesn't go anywhere. And I'll start this 90-degree bend so that it comes back over onto itself, making sure to stay center to the bottom point. It's thicker wire, so it'll take a little bit of effort, but you can do it. Before you tighten it down, you just want to make sure that point is still bottom center. And then you'll come over here and hold the extended wire, get your plier on both sides, and do a squeeze. Making sure that that front wire is kind of off to the side here, and it is. That's pretty good. We'll tie it on after we make it cute. So right now this whole thing is still, can pull back from the main frame, and that's okay. So once you get it living where you want it, you'll make sure to do a really tight squeeze to really lock it in. Controlled tight squeeze, almost as if to dent the wire there, so that this inside wire gets really locked into place. And that's pretty good. So now we'll fold this side up and over itself. I like to leave just a little bit of room, a couple of millimeters there, just for a little bit of fancy. And I've just basically hairpinned it back on itself there. Push it down with your finger. And then you can come over here and gently squeeze this together, the one we just bent, so that you kind of have a nice point at the bottom of your frame, and this wire comes up along the side on both sides. Once I get that, I like to take both of them. These wires are living both to the sides of the frame. I'm holding everything. I like to squeeze them both together just for a little bit of elegance, so it doesn't look like just a hard crossover. It looks like it's got a little bit of grace to it. And then now we have these two wires going up the sides, and you could coil them, you could decorate them if you wanted to. You don't have to. And you could do a lot of other things with them, like you could make it flare out a little bit. You could just run an extra wire and leave a little curl up on your tree. You could leave a spiral in the middle, whichever you want to do. I think in my case, with this left side. Well, maybe I'll do it with the right hand side. I will come back and make a little spiral into that space right there. So the wire is going up along the side of my frame. I'll hold it right there and just help the bend with my finger. Make a nice curve so that it starts to kind of, and I'll flare it out a little bit so I have this beautiful line right here. Once you get that looking the way you want, put your thumb right here and start the curve and kind of try to follow the center of your tree. Leave enough to kind of bulk out right there a little bit so it's pretty and it's interesting. And I have just enough wire. You should have just enough wire to make a nice little spiral. I'm going to cut the end, make sure I've got a nice clean finish on the end. I'm going to use my chain nose plier because that's actually easier to control the spiral on a big wire for me. So here are my chain nose pliers. I've got this curve looking the way I want it to. I'll take the very tip, I'll hold my curve in place, and I'll just start to curve the center of that wire. So you can see what it's looking like. I'll make sure that I still have this little flare out because I love that. And I'll just work it until I get a nice, beautiful spiral that can lay down right there in the back center of my tree sculpture, and that's gorgeous. So I'll do the same with the opposite side here. Just going to create a nice curve on it, maybe a little bit higher than that other curve. I'm using my finger, my thumb right here, just to help me curve the wire. It's getting a little bit shorter on this side now. So you kind of have this type of look to your frame, which is lovely. And I could curl this down and make a smaller spiral right there. Or I could curl it in the opposite way. There's enough of that as well. But I think I'm going to curl mine down because there's not quite a whole lot. So I'll hold on to everything. Get my chain nose at the tip of that wire. And then create a nice tiny little curl. And land it right there so that it meets up with my other one. And I still have a little bit of flare on both sides. And I love how that looks. So what I'm going to do is not tie these in yet. I'm going to pull them out, hammer them a little bit. Then I'll tie my canopy on, and then I'll tie these on. Okay, so right down here at the hinge, you want to make sure, if you're going to hammer this, and it's optional if you do. But right down here, you want to make sure to pull it out and put your finger right here so that you don't lose the positioning of it, and just make a little bit of a curve. It might loosen that up a little bit, and that's okay. Just pull it out enough to hammer it. And then while you're here, because we still have to tie the canopy on, go ahead and do the other side. Hold this together, or you can hold it together with your plier. And just pull this out slightly. Don't get caught inside your frame. So I held that together with my plier. That might be easier for you, just enough to hammer it a little bit. And we'll leave them pulled out until we tie canopy on, the beads onto our tree. So I'll get my hammer and my bench block out, lay the curve down, and I'm going to hammer the curve, and I'm going to hammer the head of the spiral. And then of course you can sand all that if you want, and I'll hammer this side same way. hammer to your liking. You can flare that out a lot more if you want. And while these are here, this should still be pretty tight. While these are out, we're going to go ahead and tie the beads on. So I'll get those pulled out. I like to work with about a foot or a foot and a half at a time. You'll get a little bit of extra 28 gauge wire. I tie my beads on to the inside, which is usually the back side of the frame. So this was the front side of the tree, the front side of the pendant. I'm going to tie the beads on in, to the opposite side so that they kind of come through the back and I can continue to see my designs. Plus it's a nice little framed pocket for your beads. So you can do it either way, but I tend to do it this way when I make these kinds of frames. And it's still a reversible tree pendant, but you can do it any way you like. So I'm just going to anchor to one piece of it here at the top. I'll take a leading inch of my wire and I'll just find a nice spot in between, in between the two main frames. I'll get it about an inch. And I'll wrap that around the frame a couple of times, trying to kind of tie it into the tree branches so it's not very noticeable. I'm staying on the side of the frame with the tree branch, or the twisted wire, so that you don't see my tie-on spot very much. So just get it anchored right there. I usually leave that little fragment on until I get some beads sewn on. And now with the other side, if you make a little scoop going up, you can just pick up a few beads. This is kind of the tedious part. It's not tedious in a bad way. It just takes a little bit of effort to coordinate these beads onto this little end. And I'll take 3 or 4 of them. I'll let them slide into place. And I'll kind of crunch them up. Make sure that I can see them. And then I'll anchor them by tying them down to a branch. I work with 3 and 4 pieces at a time so that I get nice little tight clusters, and I can control whether it's dark green or light green, and I can pick up little pieces of the Chinese crystals and make little shimmers of light here and there. It always helps if you can curve this wire end so that you can feed it through and have it come back out for you nicely. Whoop, went through the wrong spot after all that. I try not to make ties over onto the outside frame wire. I try to keep the ties all over here on the branch side so that I don't have, crossover wires. They're very discreet. You can't actually see that there's tie wire there if you work carefully. So then I'll pick up a few more. Mixing a few dark ones. I'll come through the nearest branch that doesn't leave a stretch across my wires, and I'll tie off to that branch. I think you can see it over here. I'm going to tie off to that little branch right there. try to make my tie look very discreet so that it doesn't look like it goes against the twist. I'm going to try to make it go with the flow of the twist. Whoop! I got my beginning lead wire caught in there. So I think you can see what I mean. It goes with the line of the twist versus just being a tie wire straight across the branch. And then to make it a little 3D while you're on this side, I like to drop just one or two very small ones, like the branch, you know, like the leaves are kind of coming through a little bit. Make sure that the beads are all the way landed and that there's no slack so that they're not flopping around the tie wire, that they're nice and tied securely onto the frame. So you see there's just a couple small ones poking through, but the majority of them will be tied to this side. You just keep that starter wire out of your way. Until you get a few more of these sewn on, and then you can cut that one off. And just start to work your way around the frame, around your branches as you see fit. I like to leave some of the interest showing, so I won't fill all of it up, but I'll keep checking back to this side also. Make sure that they're tight. I'll come through and tie off to that branch that's nearest to them right there. Sorry about the light, my beads are flickering a little bit. I'll try to keep it where you can see them. So just find the most logical spots to tie off your wire and to anchor the beads, making sure that they remain nice and tight so that they're not flopping around. And occasionally drop one on the or two on the opposite side to give it kind of a 3D look, and you can see your branches and you'll be able to see your leaves from both sides of the frame. So I'll keep working mine and you keep working yours until you love it, and then we'll return these to their spots and tie them on. Sometimes the ends get a little bit too brittle and it won't pick up wire anymore, so you can just snip off a little 1/2 inch if it's too bent up to go through these small holes. So you see what I mean? I tied off to that branch, but I made the tie go with the grain of the twist. so that you don't see it so much. I'm occasionally tying, a couple onto the front of the pendant, what I call the front of the pendant, even though it's two sides. So there's some 3D, but we can still see our beautiful branch work. I also find that less canopy is more. Some of these trees you'll see put a lot of canopy on the upper branches, and I prefer to kind of strategically put the canopy beads on so that we can see all the nice branch work as well. So I tend to prefer a little bit less greenery like this, and I tend to like, both sides of the pendant so we can see it coming through the interest of the branches. So that's looking really beautiful on both sides of this pendant. So I'll put a few more beads down here on these lower branches, and then that might be all the canopy I do. And you can put as many beads on as you prefer. Until you love your tree and it's looking exactly the way you want it to look. Just remember that it doesn't have to be perfect. It's a tree, so they have their natural irregular look about them, which is what's wonderful. I focus more on trying to make sure my little tie wire isn't seen and that I've got a little bit of greenery. Wow, I've got all kinds of dings and notifications going off. Sorry, you guys. But I try to make sure that I don't have just weird tie wire everywhere, that it's all kind of blended in and very secure and discreet. My goodness, what is all... Oh, we have family photos coming in, you guys. That's what's happening with all the notifications. I apologize. I should have turned those off before I started recording, but since I didn't, I'm not going to re-record this make for the notifications. You'll just have to excuse them. And I really like to make sure to anchor the beads down so that they don't feel like they're just flopping around, that they're really secure on the frame. Oop, pulled a little bit tight on that one and broke one of them, and that happens too. Chip beads can break, so don't freak out if they do. You just put a couple more on. Especially when they're small like this, they tend to break sometimes if you pull too hard. Or you just get a chip bead that doesn't have a lot of surface area on it, and the hole is very shallow. Since that's the last one on that side, I'm going to try to tie back into some of these wrapped branches to make sure that tie wire stays in place, and you can kind of see it right there, but I'm going to push it up close and then kind of walk my wire back up through some of these inside branches if I can, just to get it so that it doesn't slide. You know, sometimes when we tie the last wire right there on the main frame, it'll slide. So I try to bring the tie wire back up randomly through these branches that are wrapped just a couple of times to anchor that last one so it doesn't slide. So that's what I'm doing right now, is just kind of walking in and out of these branches. It's a little tedious to do, but I find that it's worth it. Depends on how you tie yours on. So make sure there's no stretch and that I've just got a nice anchored wrap there, avoiding my nice clear frame, but just walking this wire up through these little beads to make sure that they're nice and secure, but not so far up that I've got any kind of stretch wire that can be seen. I'm very careful to make sure there's no stretch wire that can be seen. I hope that makes sense to you. And then once you feel like you've got your beads on the way you like them, and you've got your wire anchored nice and well and secured so that it doesn't pull out, you can go ahead and break this wire off. This is probably a good spot for me. I've come through here several times. So I'm going to give the slightest tension and do circles until it breaks. It's been buried and wrapped in there several times. I'll do the same with this side. Give a little tension and make big circles until it breaks. And now we have this gorgeous canopy on both sides of our beautiful tree. The bulk of it being inside this little crevice, so that's a nice flush feel, and there's only a couple of them on this side to give some 3D shimmer, but we can see our beautiful branch work. You could tie a few more on to this side if you wanted, but I'm quite happy with how that looks. I like the interest in it, and I like the fullness of this side, so both sides are very beautiful. And now we can put these wires back into place, and I'll just do that by making sure that this bottom intersection stays tight. I'll hold it into place, and then I'll gently push these two spirals back onto the frame. And get them to the place where I love them. Make it a little more narrow. And so that we can either, I'll probably tie them together right there, or if you don't like them, covering the whole thing, you can cut them shorter and make them curl more into the body. Depends on the look that you want. That might be a little too busy against my beautiful tree. I love my tree, so I might bring these a little bit smaller at least this one and drop it down a little bit more and into the center for a center spiral. Let's see how it goes. So I'll grip the middle. I'll try not to ruin my beautiful spiral, and I'll just continue with control to put a bend on this and curl it around. It's a little bit harder to do once it's been hammered, but you see that it is possible. I just made it a little bit lower and a little bit smaller. If you don't like them at all, you can cut them off and basically just finish with a couple of little curves, and that might be what I do at the end. I like to always see my options first. Yeah, I think I love my tree, but I love this little flare, so I might cut this spiral off and really make it kind of end right here, and I can just tie, I can just tie this onto my frame, or I can even insert it in between. I might do that as well. I'll leave it up to you what you do for yours, and I'll let you just watch what I do for the rest of mine. This one I'm going to leave, I think, for now, and I'll tie it off cleverly somehow to make sure that it stays, or I might weave it right here to make sure that it stays. But this one I think I'm going to shorten, and I'm going to do that by cutting it off at an angle right here so that I have a nice angle to work with. You want to make sure to sand that. That'll be a little cleaner look on my tree, and then I can see more of my tree sculpture without it being so busy. I like that. So I'm going to pull this back out slightly. I'm going to sand that, clean it, and take the sharpness off of it. I'm going to just barely nick that tip and take the really edgy sharpness off of it. And I'm going to hammer that. A little more flat just to figure it out a little bit. I'll get my sanding stick. These are great. This is not a nail file. This is a little sanding stick. You can find these on my Amazon website. My Amazon Associates store as well if you're interested. They come in all different kind of grits, just like the sanding pads, but these are really great for doing edges like this. If you don't have one of these, your nail file, your emery board works just as well to get the sharpness off of that edge and to round it. And then you can take your sanding blocks and sand it and clean it up. So I took the edginess of that cut off. And then I would take my 1000 or 2000 grit sandpaper, sanding block or sanding pad, and really make sure to clean that up. These are great for removing any kind of tool marks that you might have here and there on your frame. I've got a little bit of a tool mark up here at the bail. Clean that up and scooch it back into place. My option would be to put it to the inside in between these layers, and that might be good too. Just a little discreet little, I like that a lot better. I might do the same up here now. Instead of leaving that curve there, I might do the same and just leave a tiny little insert like this one, and I'll tie it so that it stays, or I might tie it down here so that it stays. But I think I like this better than this, so I'll alter this one and do the same. Alright, so I think my plan is I'm going to cut this one a little bit lower so that I can dive it between the frame right about here at the bottom and still have a little flare out. Or I might do it even lower and make it come down here towards, I think I'm going to go lower and make it come down in between where the roots start right here. So it's a good lesson for you guys anyway. You'll know how to alter your stuff. I'll cut it right about here to give myself some turning room to get into that space. If you like the big curls, you leave them on there. And I'll take the sharpness off of this, get my sanding stick, certainly if you have metal files, metal jewelry files, those work great too. I've gone to these rather than the metal ones just because I find they're a little easier to use. They're a little bit flexible but still rigid enough that I can get a really good sanding. It's just easier for me, more space and not a tiny little metal file, but whatever you have that works for you. So I've softened that up a bit. You can work yours to your liking. This is what's great about them. You can get into that curve. And get your tool marks into weird places. You can sand into weird places like that just by squishing it up. Okay, so I think you get the idea. And now I think I'm going to cause a little more bend on this. So let's see if I can get it to bend. So it's already hammered, which is going to make it difficult to bend. So I like to use my chain nose plier and just go very small little bits at a time. Trying not to make any tool marks and seeing if I can get it positioned in between my two frames here, kind of stashed into the branches and the leaves right there, just like that on both of them. And that's a good place to have those. I did a little bit of a dent right here by accident earlier, so I'm going to try to fix that little bit of my wire. Doesn't look too bad. Try to curve it and put some elegance on it. That looks a little better. Curve it down a little bit. Make these two really crisscross right there. And your tips are going in between the frame. I'll also try to bring these two segments a little closer together just by giving light love taps, and this side as well. And I can stabilize these. I'm just going to over push that so it goes in a little bit. That looks, I think, really nice. It's a little sleeker, not so bubbled out. So a couple of options we have is to either tie it literally, right up there, which I think would be odd. So rather, I'm going to cinch it up down here by doing a little bit of weaving right here and right here, and just as little accents, but it will stabilize these two wires and keep them into place. Or you can just do straight wrapping across there. So I'll get these two a little closer together right here, but leaving a little gap so I can weave nicely, making sure that these elements look the way I want them to, and that's beautiful. I like just that little bit. Alright, so little extra 28 gauge, you guys. Change of plan. You may or may not have, oh, I just broke one of the beads. You may or may not have gotten any extra 28 gauge, but I don't think I mentioned this in the beginning because we changed the plan of the tree frame, but I like this better. So I will go from here with another couple of feet of 28 gauge weaving wire, and I'll just do one side at a time. So it's about 12 inches here, maybe 16 inches, and I'm just going to stitch them together right there. I'll anchor myself to the front and make it look natural and beautiful. Hold on to about an inch of that. And if you don't want to do a weave, I might just actually do a few wraps just to anchor it and do, rather than trying to weave into this tight space, I'm just going to do overhanded wraps to secure them together. So I'll get anchored with 3 wraps here. Whoop! Was off screen, you guys. Sorry about that. So I'm just anchoring with a couple of little wraps right there on this decorative flared out wire. And then I'll go over and wrap to the opposite frame wire to hold them together. Let me see if I can change my camera and get a little closer for you guys. Yeah, so you can see I've anchored 3 or 4 times there, then I've jumped over and I'll make two wraps on this side. So this will kind of do like a modified sumac on this. So there's 2. I'll jump over. You could also do a figure 8 wrap between these if you wanted to work in and out of that space. There's enough space for you to comfortably do that. I'm just going to go ahead and do overhand and modified sumac. Against these 2 wires here. So I'll jump back over. So I've wrapped 2 and I've jumped through and to the bottom side. So I'll anchor with 2 wraps here. And then I'll jump back over and attach to the top of the frame, or the top wire, I should say. And I'll do a couple of anchoring wraps there. I'll jump all the way through. And I'll do a couple more wraps on this outside wire. Then I will jump over and attach to the top of the frame wire again. So it's basically two anchoring wraps on the lower and then on the top. I'm sorry, 2 anchoring wraps on the bottom, and then I'm going to jump over, do 2 anchoring wraps on the top, and then jump over. So kind of a modified sumac with an extra wrap in between. So there's one. There's the second one. And now I will pass across both of them from that side. Which brings me to the bottom of this decorative one, and I'll do 2 anchoring wraps right there. You can do about 6 of these repeats, 3 to 6 of them. So here I've got 3 crossovers, and that should be enough to stabilize that wire, or you can do more if you'd like for decoration. This is also a good place if you wanted to add decorative small bead balls. I'm not going to, because I feel like it'll get a little bit busy. But I'll make 4 of these total repeats and come far enough up this frame that it will anchor that wire. So there are 4 crossovers. I'll make 2 anchoring wraps on this lower wire, and then that'll be all for this side, and then I'll repeat by tying up this opposite side. You could do, even if you felt like it, you could probably sink one wrap into the tree roots as well, because this frame is still separate. So while you're here, once you reach the tree roots, we'll dive a couple of times into a discrete place and anchor the whole back frame wire onto the tree frame. Okay, so from here, I've got 2 anchoring wraps right there, and I'm close enough to my tree roots. I'll pass back through here. I like to get the wire first and then figure out where best to dive into the roots so that I don't have a stretch wire showing. So I'll get this back to the inside of the frame. My wraps are clean here on the side. And now I'll figure out where I can dive into the tree roots, which is right here. That'll be clean and it won't stretch. I won't have an odd stretch wire. It'll look very natural. Help me pull my frame together. It's coming out right here. So I will dive back through and to the opposite wires by making sure that my tie wire goes in between those roots so I can't see it. It leaves me in between those two. I can make a natural loop. Doesn't look like I have a stretch wire. So I make a coil right there. And now I'm actually in a position where I can jump back through the roots another time. See, I don't want to do that because it'll look like I'm stretched. So I'm going to instead go back to the inside of the tree frame. So it looks like a clean coil right there. And it puts me in position to dive through my roots again for another wrap. So I'll go right there through the roots. So it looks natural and you don't see the actual tie-on. And it leaves me right back here to make a second pass, which I will, if I can't do it from there, yeah, I think I can. So I'll go right there and you won't be able to see it, and I'll make a second tie-on. And I'll just guide this wire so that it goes into those tree roots where I want it to, so it's invisible. And it leaves me now in between these two wires again, and I can do a couple more wraps to this outside or even to the inside one, whichever you feel like you choose. But I've got two nice anchoring wraps right there. I could go up a few more and do two more right here, and I'll do that just to make an example for you. But this is pretty solid now, and actually it's quite solid now, so I'm not going to go any more up. So I'll just make another couple of wraps to make sure I've got some nice secure ends right here, and then I will break this wire off and tie the other side. So those are clean coils. I'm attached. Now you can see there's two wraps right here. It doesn't flop around anymore, and I can break this wire off on the inside by giving a little tension, doing big circles, breaks to the inside, very nice and clean. I can do the same with this one now. Give a little tension and do big circles until it breaks. And that's a very clean tie. It's pretty on both sides and on its side. And it anchors the tree to the back wires and puts the whole pendant together so it doesn't flop, and it keeps your decorative wire nice and stable right there. So I'll repeat on this side. I'll weave a little bit. It doesn't have to be the exact same distance, but I'll weave a little bit, and then right about there I'll dive into my tree branch, my tree roots, and anchor the frame there. Or I might anchor it from the back depending on which wire reaches better. Okay? So you do yours, you can watch me do mine, and then that'll be it for this beautiful tree sculpture, you guys. Alright, you guys, well, here's the final piece. I went ahead and tied the other side on, just like I did the first side with you. I did it off camera because my hands are starting to get a little bit achy, but anyway, turned out pretty good. I washed it with soap and water and a little toothbrush or nail brush to get all of your fingerprints and work off of the piece. It's nice and shiny. I went ahead and put a rose gold chain with it because it happens to match natural copper very nice. If you wanted to keep this look and not have it darken on you, you can watch my finishing video, which is linked in the video description down here as well, to show you how to seal this pendant with a product called Protect-A-Clear metal sealant. It's a professional metal sealant and can be used on jewelry, and you can see about it in my finishing video. Anyway, thanks for watching, you guys. I hope you really love this, and if you did, please give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, let me know how you're feeling, and certainly if you make one, look me up on social media so that I can see your beautiful work. Please tag me so that we can celebrate you. And I will see you for the next one. Thanks again for being here, and I appreciate you watching my channel. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.